I can remember building models. I remember my first gasoline model airplane engine, and that was in elementary school. And that tied into the aviation and the flying things. For the 50 years I was working, my hobby was my work. I was very fortunate in that I loved what I did. And that's one of the struggles that Barbara and I are having now, because she says, I thought you were retired. And I said, well, technically I am, but I'm still trying to work. I've categorized my life as being actually a good level of fame. It's not. I'm not famous. I can count on one hand, literally on one hand, the number of times that people have recognized me. My legacy, if you will be my grandson. My two kids, my one son has a grandson who will be 16 this summer. When I told my kids I was going to fly, they said, that's God's honest truth, something to this. That's nice, Dad. You want to go play football? My name is Bob Cenker. I flew on the Space Shuttle Columbia. I flew as what was technically called a payload specialist. That means I was associated with a particular payload. And in this case, it was an infrared imaging experiment and the SATCOM KU-1 communication satellite.
Guidance now conversion. We'll stand by now for the flight dynamics officer.
We'd like to welcome today the crew of Mission 61C. We want to wish them a very, very happy journey.
Robert Cenker is about to boldly go where few have gone before. The 36-year-old RCA engineer has been selected to ride on the space shuttle later this year.
Well, this is the story of a young boy growing up in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, who couldn't decide whether to become a priest or an astronaut. But come this December, that engineer, a fellow who still plays with model rockets, is going to get an incredible Christmas present.
As RCA's first payload specialist, about the only thing I can say is you can't imagine how happy I am to be here today.
And as I said, this used to just be a porch, so it was wide open. And she looks at me and she says, I want this house. I said, don't say that. We want to make them an offer first before. So maybe between 5 and 10 stores there, but one of them is called KK Suites, and they just bought the shop next door.
We've been in this house now, Dan will be 45 years. 46, because Dan was born when...
I still don't consider myself to be an explorer. I didn't go with that goal. I went for my satellite. I went for this experiment. I went because it was fun, let's be honest. The model airplanes, the flying, the math, it all sort of came together then in the high school, and that's how I wound up in aerospace engineering. And quite frankly, when I went into aerospace, I was thinking flying, I'm thinking airplanes. At the time, the space program was just starting, and we really didn't know. I wore glasses. I'd worn glasses since my sophomore year in high school and when I was in the seminary, so I figured that was a disqualifier, never dreaming that would eventually go away, and it did.
The only thing airborne about Robert Cenker up till now has been his work. He's a designer of space satellites, at it for 13 years here at RCA's Astroelectronics Center in East Windsor.
These are some of the people who, along with Bob Cenker, build satellites for RCA. And here's a rendition of the satellite for which engineer Cenker will provide the...
I had applied twice to be a career astronaut before I flew. And I had heard, purely coincidentally, that RCA was going to be flying someone as a payload specialist. Never even crossed my mind that it would be me. So I dismissed that. I really didn't think there was going to be anything more to that. And in February or March, I got a call from the VP of engineering. And he said, Bob, he says, you know, RCA is going to be able to fly a payload specialist. And I said, yeah, I'd heard that. And he said, would you be interested in going? I said, gee, let me think about that. Yes. And he says, okay. And so I hung up the phone, and I was wired. I mean, I was as high as a kite. And I sat at my desk for about 10 or 15 minutes, and I said, no. And I finished the day, and I came home. I walked through that door, and Barbara was in the kitchen. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but I remember her looking at me. She said, "You're going to fly, aren't you?" I said, "How the hell did you know that?" She said, "It's written all over your face." You know, I said, "You could say no." She says, "Yeah." She says, "First of all," she says, "I said you could when we got married. And second of all," she says, "what would our life be like if I denied you that now?" She says, "You go." I called my house. My mother's voice comes over the line. She says, "How you doing?" I said, "Mom," I said, "you probably should sit down. RCA has told me," I said, "I've got an opportunity. I'm going to be flying on the space shuttle." "You mean inside it?" And I hear my dad's voice, "No, Jay, he's going to sit on the wing." The training was essentially, you went through each day of the mission with things going wrong.
Bob has been associated with the SATCOM, the satellite that we're going to be putting out on the first day.
Your mind has to reprocess a lot of information, and there's no way to do it down here. Obviously, you have these conversations with your friends and acquaintances, and they said, "Aren't you afraid of doing this?" And I said, "No, but ask me that at T-minus 10 seconds. Before the first attempt, I can remember very clearly laying in bed thinking, do I really want to do this? I got a beautiful wife, I got 3 nice kids, I got a good job. Do I want to sit on 4 million pounds of slow-burning dynamite so they can light it? Yes. Yeah. I really want to do that."
We're now just about 4 hours away from the opening up today's launch window for Mission 61C. The commander for this mission is Robert Gibson. Pilot is Charles Bolden. The 3 mission specialists are George Pinky Nelson, Stephen Hawley, and Franklin Chang Diaz. 2 payload specialists are Robert Cenker of RCA and Florida U.S. Representative Bill Nelson.
All shuttle systems are go for launch. We're simply waiting for improving weather that will allow us to go today.
I believe the first time we made it to within about 13 seconds. But once they wave you off, there is no waiting. No. You're done. We're on the pad on the second launch attempt, and we got the call from the ground. We got a 10-minute extension on the launch window, and I'm sitting there laying on the pad saying, "Yeah, okay, I can agree with that," because they didn't ask me. I'm the guy who did the calculations. I'm the guy who knew the answer. 10 minutes came and went. We still hadn't gone. Every launch delay is different. Somebody said something about engineering being precise. No, it isn't, particularly not in the space business. I mean, we try to be precise.
Weather forecast looking pessimistic for this morning. Columbia ready to go for launch, but unable to get off the pad at this time.
We had done this 4.5 times. This was the 5th time. With all of the launch attempts, I don't want to say it became routine, but it became routine. We got on the vehicle. I literally, one morning, fell asleep on the pad. You get on the vehicle about 2 hours before launch. You're hanging on the wall. You think you voided, gone to the bathroom. You think.
Everything very good here at Kennedy Space Center as far as weather is concerned. Just 1 minute, 26 seconds away now from the launch of Mission 61C.
When they light the main engines, and it takes a finite amount of time for the engines to come up to full power, as soon as they turn on, the whole vehicle starts to rack, and it bends.
Columbia, Houston, configure a SIMO voice check. Hoot, how do you read? Charlie? Roger, Pinky. Roger, loud and clear. Franklin? Morning, Steve. Roger, Bob.
We were ready to go. The vehicle was ready to go.
Coming up on T-minus 31 seconds and go for auto sequence start.
Then they light the solids. Then you find out what noise is, and you feel it going through you.
T-minus 12 seconds.
I waved to my family because I knew they were down there somewhere.
T-minus 10, go for engine start.
And I said a prayer.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
You close your eyes on the space shuttle, you know you're going somewhere. It feels like there's this weight on your chest. So breathing was a conscious effort. They're calling out altitude 5 miles, downrange 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles, and your mind knows it's you. It is the weirdest feeling in the world. You're going from standing still to 17,500 miles an hour in 8 minutes. And that's the ride uphill.
It's something that I've always wanted to do, and I had given up any hope of being able to do it. And when I found out indeed I was, it made my day.
And you're accelerating. You reach that 3G limit, and they throttle back the engines, till you get to your orbital velocity, and the engines stop, and you go 3 Gs to 0, just like that. The commander called down, and he says, okay, he says, we think we're here. He said, don't unpack anything, but if you want to get out of your seat and get a feel for 0G, you can do that now. I remember coming up out of my seat, and I can picture it like it was yesterday. I'm hanging on to my seatbelt, and I am floating, looking down at my seat, thinking, I am not going to use that chair again for the next 5 days. That was memorable, to put it mildly.
Columbia, Houston, we'll have a short drop out between Hawaii and Tidris. We'll see you at Tidris in 1 minute.
Okay, we'll be ready.
A lot of people have asked me, how's it feel to see the world hanging like a little ball off in space? I have no idea. When you're in low Earth orbit, the Earth is huge. It fills the window. I mean, it's like you go like this to see from side to side. The amazing thing is you're moving so fast, and you're not even aware of how fast you're moving. You don't. There's no wind speed. There's no sound.
And this is Mission Control. Now about 9.5 minutes away from deploying the SATCOM satellite.
I didn't have anything to do with the deployment except to watch.
Columbia, Houston, you have a go for deploy.
Thank you, Houston.
When we deployed it, I had a chance for about 20 minutes to just watch it float away. And I had worked on that spacecraft for 2 years. I passed over a lightning storm, a thunderstorm over Africa. It was incredible. It was night. It was like watching popcorn in a popper. You could see the clouds lighting up. But then, as we came up over Africa, the skies cleared, and you saw this big swatch of lights, and it was Cairo. And you look up above, north of that, and you see all black, the Mediterranean. I could see Disney World from space.
He was on a mission, you might recall, the landing of which was delayed for 24 hours. He said he
stayed awake the whole night while the rest of the shuttle crew slept. Then he wanted to use those few hours alone just to look out the window.
The reason I stayed up all night was because we had packed everything to come home. And once you packed everything, you weren't going to unpack everything. The 8 hours I was supposed to be sleeping, I saw 5 sunrises and sunsets. Imagine the most spectacular sunrise or sunset you've ever seen. Imagine flying through all those colors in about 2 minutes. Nobody could really understand. The people that can only come close to understanding are my parents, because they watched me grow up with this. My wife, because she's the closest, she's my soulmate, she's the closest person in the world to me. I'm pretty sure I'm the only guy in the world who's both launched and retired the same spacecraft. 10 years later, they hired me, not knowing what I had done, to retire the shuttle. So I gave them 6 more months. So it's been decommissioned. CNN, HBO, all of those cable networks were started on SATCOM 1 and SATCOM 2, and I got a patent on SATCOM 1. I met Barbara, my parents, and the kids back in Houston. I don't really remember much. I look at those pictures for memories of that. I was not at all adapted to 1G. I mean, you could stand and walk. We went out to eat that night, and Laura was a year old. We're all sitting down to dinner, and they got a high chair, and I went to put her in the high chair. I almost fell over. They had to help me put her in the high chair. I had to readapt. I remember Sunday morning undoing the lid on the toothpaste and dropping it and reaching up like this, because that's where I expected the lid to be. By Sunday afternoon, it was gone. Sunday afternoon, I was okay. So Monday, I went jogging again.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
I was on an airplane for LA when the Challenger blew up. And I don't know what it feels like to go into shock. But I guess that's as close as I can come.
Cenker trained with 2 members of the doomed Challenger crew. One of them was Krista McAuliffe, the woman who was to be the first teacher in space. Cenker says he and McAuliffe talked a couple of days before her mission took off.
One of the pieces of advice that my dad gave me was never take a drink because you think you need one. And the guy sitting next to me on the plane, I don't know how he decided this. He says, are you okay? And I said, the Challenger just blew up. You're taking it really tough. He said, did you know any of them? I said, I was on the last shuttle mission. I said, I trained with them. And he called the stewardess, and the stewardess came by, and she says, is there anything I can do for you? I said, yeah, I'll have a drink. I called Barbara, and my neighbor answered the phone. He said, Bob, there's a TV van parked in your front driveway. There were guys standing on that porch videotaping through the window, watching my kids sit on the floor and watch TV. I remember Barbara asking me, she says, what were they doing? I said, 1 minute into the flight, they were grinning from ear to ear. And she says, that's right.
Teachers are excited about this bill. I spoke to them.
She was a neat lady. I liked her a lot. I've done thousands of school speeches. And I see kids in the back of the room, and they're horsing around, and they don't care. Some of them may have just been horsing around. Some of them may have been troubled children. I don't know. I'm not a trained educator. Krista was. The country really doesn't grasp the loss when she was killed because they lost that resource.
Teachers are always prepared.
Krista and I never exchanged autograph photos. We were going to. We joked about it. We said, no, we're going to wait till we're both veterans. Most payload specialists, because they didn't live in Houston, one of the spouses was a realtor, and she would arrange apartments. So Krista and I had apartments in the same complex.
The tragedy of the shuttle Challenger.
She was leaving for the Cape as I was coming back from some trip. She stopped me in the parking lot. She says, how was it? And I said, when you come back, we'll talk. I said, I can't describe it. Words fail me. I'm an engineer. I'm not going to be able to tell you. I said, when you come back, I said, we'll exchange notes. And obviously that never happened either. She was a neat lady. And then Columbia went down 13 years later, which was the vehicle that I had hoped someday to find in a museum and go visit. And that didn't happen either.
And as a visitor to the NASA organization, I can say to these people here and to the entire NASA organization and to the crew especially, thank you for accepting me. I enjoyed it every bit as much as I expected it to, and I just again like to thank everyone.
God is first, family second, I'm third. I got that from a football player. There's a movie that was popular when I was in college called Brian's Song. It's a story of Brian Piccolo, who was a football player, and Gale Sayers, his good friend. And the coach had a sign above his desk, God is first, family is second, I am third.
No further ado, if you will join me in welcoming Bob Cenker.
Please join me in welcoming Space Shuttle astronaut Bob Cenker.
And his presentation on life in space.
I've talked to people and I see the reaction in people's eyes. I'm not going to say I've changed them, but it's certainly clear that I've really changed their impressions. Never, ever thought I'd say those words.
Barbara loves these. She says, yeah, it's hard to believe you were miserable in that picture because this was flight day 1. One of our 5 launch attempts. We had breakfast. What might be easier for you, I've got all of these electronically.
Yeah, that would be great.
I don't expect to be remembered. I don't feel that I've done anything notable other than a name in a long list of names. My dad said his comment was well placed. He knows I wasn't the right stuff. I wouldn't have passed the physical to be a career astronaut. But the fact that I have flown has made me special. But only because I was in the right place at the right time. And I'll take that.
I think it. Oh, you can cut it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.